the key thing I think there was getting together all the business, and this is the layer we haven't talked about, getting together the different business owners of work groups. So all the accounting, different departments, the financial planning different departments, the field engineers, and looking at their CRM, their customer resource management system, and looking at the install base of where stuff was implemented in their customers, and looking at it from the whole, the entire world, the whole satellite of core ERP plus all the ancillary systems, and bringing all those people together and talking about how to get onto one way of doing things.
Hello, my name is Heath Gascoigne, and I am the host of the Business Transformation Podcast. And this is the show for business transformators who are part business strategists, part business designers, part collaborators, and part negotiators. Business transformators have moved past just business design and includes oversight of implementation of those business designs and business transformation, and includes stakeholder management, coordination, and negotiation. If you work in strategy development and implementation, and you work to ensure that that strategy is designed and aligned to the business design and technology, then you're probably a business transformator. This is the show where we speak to industry experts and professionals to share their stories, strategies, and insights to help you start, turn around, and grow your business transformation. Welcome to the Business Transformation Podcast. And in this episode, we are talking to one of those industry experts. We are talking to Wes Maclagan. Wes is currently the practice director at Business Transformation IT Transformation at Patina, Corn Ferry Company. Previously, project manager, transformation architects at Edgewater Razel, where he was there for 3 years. A quick summary of the background there, that Wes is actually a chartered accountant. He has a background in IT. He is also a former Big Four consultant with McKinsey, CSC, and EDS some time ago, where he got his groundings there in cost management, ROI, risk management, transaction flow. Also worked with a lot of Fortune 500 and mid-tier companies. Wes, thank you for being here. Glad to have you on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm going to enjoy it.
Okay. Now, thank you for being here. So you have a vast background, and as we just spoke briefly just before the start there, that I think you've been generous to your followers and listeners and connections on LinkedIn, that you have given the summary on LinkedIn, because your CV is quite long. So, and because of that, you have over 2 decades of experience in senior roles and big programs that we're going to keep in terms of our listeners, to give them some groundings of what we're going to discuss. With 3 points is that we are going to talk about, to keep us on track, the starting point. What do you do when you start a project? What is it that you look for? Number 2, is there a process in these transformations that you lead, that you follow? And number 3, the critical success factors that you use to manage both the project and also risk management. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
Okay, so starting off with the starting point. So you're joining a project, a program. What is your approach that you look for? You do one of the first things that you kick off when you join a program.
The first thing I do is sit across a table, or a conference room table, a desk in the executive sponsor's office, and I listen to them. I listen to what the issue is, or what they think the issue is, and what the problem is that they're trying to solve, what the challenges are facing the business. And often I will sketch out what they're talking about in a picture with them, and it's engaging for them because they can see that, and then I've recorded in a pictorial format right from the beginning what the lay of the land looks like to them, and what the issues are. So then I talk to them about all the stakeholders in the organization that need to be part of this, and get an understanding from their perspective about who's on board, who's likely to be on board, who may be resistant. And so then we come up with a solution approach, and I try different things out and say, well, we could do this, we could approach it this way or that way.
Okay.
And then getting the executive sponsors buy-in, then we have some agreement on what we're going to do. The next step is usually, okay, go around and meet with these key stakeholders and
Uh-huh.
have the one-on-one conversations with them, get their understanding about the problem. And in every case, you're looking for the what's in it for them factor.
Okay, the what's in it
So
for
that
them.
you're-
All right. Okay, so
What's in it for them?
that I have you're covering a lot of stuff here, so I'm making some notes. We're going to play it back in a second. For the audience perspective, you said some great things, and I think they might have missed them. But let's quickly recap there before we go for that. What's in it for them? So I have a what's in it for what's in it for them. I have a what's in it for me. So so the WIIFT is you've got, and I used to use. I think I'm going to upgrade here to the WIIFT from the FM to the FT. Mine was the what's in it for me. Yours is the what's in it for them. So I love it. So the first part there, I think, in case the audience missed it, is that you start at number one, the executive, and then you give them so the top of the org chart, the top of the organization, where the decision making is, and number two is that you put the visualization. And I think that's a critical part. And I'm helping a client here right now, and up here in Manchester, and they've started this project by almost recording everything in spreadsheets. And when they are facilitating workshops with the business, they're looking at spreadsheets. And when I come along and I said, I'm not sure, unless these guys are either data analysts or have an analytical mind to be able to see what you're talking about in tables and cells. I said, well, I think what we could do is lift it out of there and present it in a view that they can understand. And so what you've done straight away is that you've got everyone on the same page, because it's something they can see and understand the context of what we're talking about here. So the first point there is you'll get the top of we've gone to the top of the org chart. The second part is you provide the visualization of what you've understood from these guys at the top of the org chart. Yeah. So that's a key part for our listeners there, the visualization. And I want to stress to our listeners, and also I'm really talking to the client right now, my client, visualization. Get out of the spreadsheets, put it on the wall so that we can all see it and agree on it. Yep. And then the third point there was you've asked and identified who those stakeholders that you should engage with. So you've gone from the executive level or the C-suite level down into operations. And so the operations being the people where the change happens, right?
Yes.
Yep. So and part of that you said, which I think that it might have got missed there for the audience, is that understand who's on board and who's not on board. And so Wes, why is that important? For those that don't know, why is it important? Those are on board and not on board. Why would you need to know that?
Well, it's you can have people that are passive aggressive, who say that they'll help, but they really stall things out, or they put roadblocks up. You can find out that there might be just antagonism between different personalities, and you need to understand that and see if there's a way to work around that or resolve things. And then you want people on board, you want them energized. You need people in the organization who are going to be champions. So the executive sponsor is a champion, but he needs other people also championing the effort.
So you need champions up and down the organization.
Yes. So eventually, once you find out what the lay of the land is and you find out the different stakeholder perspectives, you get everybody in a conference room and you go over the same stuff again, but now everyone's in the same room together. And that brings an honesty to the picture. In that they have to look at each other eye to eye, and they're all looking at the same whiteboard and understanding the flow from beginning to end all together, and they can discuss what their real issues and problems are, and you can really tease out at a very fine level what needs to be worked on.
Okay. So
and then that marshals people, and it becomes a matter of business logic that we should fix this. This is really what our main issue is, and so we should really rally around that and do something about it.
Okay. So that part about that, get them all in the same room so that we can agree end to end, so everyone sees the full spectrum of the scope of the project or the problem. And then so part of there, you're doing a bit of identification of the issues, and then prioritization. And then part of that is, okay, in terms of business priorities, what are we going to attack first? But that was with the key part there is that you went from the senior sponsor, senior executives down to operations, identify the key stakeholders, and part of that key stakeholders is okay, there's some that guys are going to be with us and some are maybe not with us or against us, and some are just going to follow what everyone else does. And so the key part there, I think, in case the audience missed it, is that there are, like it or love it or loathe it, there are some people for other reasons, including empire protection, that they are probably a bit reluctant to the change. They might think change is, they're going to lose something. They lose headcount, they lose a share of the bonus. So they are protective about their empire. So what do you do in that case? And how do you get those people on board?
Yeah, so if there's some kind of obstacle like that, then it makes me want to dig further and find out what's the story behind the story.
Yeah.
Try to resolve things at a cause and effect level.
Behind the story behind the story. I'm going to quote you and they'll like that.
Yep.
The story behind the story.
And it's also, practically speaking, one of the things that you go back and you talk to the executive sponsor about, because if there is somebody who's going to be a roadblock, you're going to need more. You need your individual influence, but you also need the corporate structure and the influence and the authority structure there to help work the issue.
Okay, there's a good point there. So that executive level, like I'm sure you know, the common causes of program failure is lack of business user involvement, lack of senior leadership support, changing requirements, and incomplete requirements. So that one there is the senior leadership support. And so what you have is you have the senior leadership support. So you're making sure with that senior leadership support that, one, you've got it, and two, you use it to your ability to help with that engagement of the first problem, being that the lack of business user involvement. So that involvement and also engagement, of course, and then do they want to do it or not? So the key part there is that you're using the right tools for the listeners. Is like, okay, you can't continue beating your head against the wall if you know it's an issue. How do you address it? Take it to the top.
Yes, you take it to the top. And then when you're trying to structure your plan, once you understand the lay of the land and all the requirements, and you don't always understand all the requirements, that's impossible to do. It's a discovery process that goes throughout. Then you bring it back to, okay, well, maybe in our first phase, we attack the parts that are more controllable. So the scope of the project that's within stakeholders that are for the project and for the initiative, and you defer the part that's later. And what you hope to do is to win converts to your project over time, where they start seeing success in one area that draws people into wanting to be part of that success. And then you have a basis for going back and talking to the stakeholder that maybe is resistant, and you have a success story or many success stories to talk about. And you, again, you're looking for the what's in it for them, which is what's the with them for them, right? It's what's in it for me, but you're selling that to them, and you're looking for that over a course of time. So you may not convert somebody right away, but you don't lose sight of that over the course of the project.
Okay, so there's some really good points there. You said at the beginning of that was that you have the requirements, but you know you don't have all the requirements. But you start with where you can get the quick wins there to get the momentum, and also the let's say it's more or less a stakeholder management approach, that method, so that those laggards or those resistant will be okay. They will come on board. They might see the benefits. They're starting to realize some benefits here. Let's get them on board. I do something similar with starting the project with the vision and saying to what's in it for me. So this is the what's in it for me. We break that down to strategies, objectives, and measures. And then once we've got everyone on board, and we might have those same people that aren't interested and for whatever reason protecting their empire, is that when we get that first what's in it for me and they can actually see it, they go, you know what? If this is the way we're going about it, and we started with the what's in it for me, and I can see what's in it for me, hey, let's just give this thing a go.
Yeah, so one example is that one client, I was working with their corporate FP&A of two of their business divisions, and we did a comparison and benchmarked each other against their best practices, and then maybe in the consulting firm bringing in other best practices from other places. And we benchmarked their process. So we mapped out all their processes for one division, mapped out those same processes in another division, and did comparison. Then the one of the divisions said, we're going to go on and implement. So we went on and implemented over the course of about 18 months, successive phases.
Yep.
In the course of it, we did organizational transformation for that FP&A department. We cut their headcount by 22%. We cut their business process cycle by half, went from 7 months down to 3 months for their annual budgeting cycle.
Whoa.
And we implemented a tool that they already had and avoided buying $3 million worth of licenses for another tool that the IT department was planning to do. So we saved $1 million in capital costs.
Wow.
So after that project got implemented, then every other division, even beyond the second division we were doing the benchmark with, that division plus the other IT division, which was $1 billion organization, implemented the same FP&A model that we put in at the first division, and they just replicated it across the company. And
Forgive me. Sorry.
Yes.
What does FP&A stand for?
Oh, financial planning and analysis.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah. So it's a corporate EPM, enterprise performance management systems.
Like a ERP.
EPM.
Okay.
EPM, enterprise performance management. Right.
All right. Nice. Okay. Good one. So what you were able to do, demonstrate by probably a keen partner, if you like, or division in an organization. You got proved your approach, delivered the results, delivered the benefit. And then the other divisions thought, you know what, we use that as the blueprint, if you like. And so they copied that approach and got the same outcome.
Yes, that's right. And the neat thing was, while we were working with that one division, they grew from 4 billion a year to 8 billion a year to 16 billion per year over the 3-year period that we were engaged with them doing different phases of this project.
Whoa.
So we were able to help them absorb the acquisition and grow their size tremendously. And we replicated it out to these new acquisitions that they were doing. And then after all that, then the organization replicated it across their other divisions. So that one division was growing from 4 billion to 8 billion to 16 billion during that time.
Wow. So usually with actually, I just commented on a previous guest on the podcast. He shared something about the M&A activity and about the failure of the M&As. Actually, it was a healthcare just recently did an acquisition, and the failure was really around trying to integrate. And so the integration part is effectively going from 2 current operating models to a central operating model, and it fell apart. And that's why probably you get groups, like a company that's a group that owns different brands, different labels. They don't integrate because the issue of trying to put these 2 companies together, people, process, technology, and data, and culture, is like, that's so big a change, they don't want to integrate. But the benefits and value that you can get out of it if it's done well, tremendous. As you can see here, that you've gone 1 billion. Yep. Yeah.
So it made me think of another client. I was actually a vice president of enterprise integration internally for this company, and they had acquired 3 companies.
Whoa.
So they had 3 different 24/7 operations going on in parallel, and they were all operating on their own ERP platform.
Okay. Yeah.
So as a VP of enterprise integration, my job was to figure out how could we consolidate them all into one business operating model and get them running on one set of systems. So we did that. And one of the benefits, for instance, was they were planning to go public, so they needed to become Sarbanes-Oxley compliant.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And so if you had to implement Sarbanes-Oxley across all 3 business units, it would cost 3 times as much as if you consolidated business process and systems onto one platform. You're automatically saving 2/3.
Yeah. Do it once, did it 3 times.
Right.
Okay. And so how did you do that? Same approach.
Yeah, same approach. So the key thing I think there was getting together all the business and this is the layer we haven't talked about, getting together the different business owners of work groups. So all the accounting, different departments, the financial planning different departments, the field engineers, and looking at their CRM, their customer resource management system, and looking at the install base of where stuff was implemented in their customers, and looking at it from the whole, the entire world, the whole satellite of core ERP plus all the ancillary systems, and bringing all those people together and talking about how to get on to one way of doing things.
Wow, one way of working.
Yeah, and that's right, one way of working. We had business systems analysts, we had technical architects, we had business people, we had accountants and controllers and directors of finance involved, and we had directors of operations and of field engineering, and you bring them all together and you work the problem. And so I held a series of workshops where we went through all the processes and teased out what the problems were, and then I brought the core team together and we said, how are we going to get onto one platform? And we figured out where, first we had to do an inventory. Where is everything? What is everything really working on? And usually in companies, you got to talk to Susie and Fred and Joe and Bob to figure out all the pieces of stuff. So that's what we did. And we diagrammed visualization again. We diagrammed everything and how all the systems, how they all integrated, or whether it was human integration or whether it was systematic integration. And we ended up with these giant maps, but we knew where everything was for the first time. And then you can make realistic estimates on what's it going to take to do that, because you have all the experts in the room all looking at the same information. And then it's much better controlled on your scope. It's much better on giving valid estimates, and you can build top-down models, you can build bottoms-up models, middle-out models for estimating.
All right, so the key part there, in case the audience missed it, and this is I don't know if it's a funny thing or what do you call it, a oxymoron about processes. And process is fundamental to business transformation. And so you talked there about getting everyone in the same room, on the same page, and looking at the processes and all of the universe of where things are, which guys see. I hear these conversations when I go into programs. I talk, oh, we've got these capabilities, we want this capability. And I go, okay, so this capability that you want or have, well, how is it enabled? Well, we have how it's enabled by the process. The processes that make up that capability. So if you want to see what makes up that capability, just look at the processes that are in that capability, because that's where the work is done. And when we make changes, we want a new ways of working. So what does that mean exactly? You're going to change the processes. So where do you need to go to? You need to get to the processes. But what do I see? People want to avoid going to the processes. And I think there's a part there to it. I'm not sure if you also see it yourself, but there has been, and I've seen it a few times now, a little cottage industry has been created around processes and process maps and process models. And sometimes it serves, when it should serve a purpose, it serves one purpose. And that purpose is usually from the creator of those process maps. And that creator isn't the business. It's a part in the change transformation team or department who manages all the processes and process models. And they've made it in a language, mostly BPMN, business process modeling notation, that them themselves love it and it's useful for them. But when you want to show the business look at it like they're looking at blank stares and they're going, this looks interesting, but it's not very useful.
Yeah, it can be so detailed that people get lost. So that's one reason why you bring people into the same conference room so that everyone can look at it, and I encourage people to stand up, point to something, and talk about certain processes or what's going on here, what's going on there, and people can interact with it and each other. And you have to build it together. If you just build something asynchronously and then bring them into a room, they're overwhelmed. But if they're part of the building of it, then they own it and they understand it, how it nests together. But you do have to, so that's the point. And the next point is you have to take that working group session and you have to report back to executive management. So somehow you have to distill all the detailed process maps and create a higher level picture of that that's simpler, more consumable for executive levels. But then usually you work in tandem. You show them the overview, and then you also bring them into that same war room where your maps are all over the wall, and you can then say, okay, this is where you're hurting, and you point to something on the map. And so they start to understand, instead of being 5 levels removed, they start understanding what is going on in the trenches, and there's aha moments that go off.
Yes.
People.
Okay. Yeah. I think what we're talking about here is that when executives come down and they see the detail or they understand it for the first time, that, as you said, aha moment is that they, in most cases, their perception versus reality is a little bit removed from reality. They're not like on some programs I get told who is the stakeholders that I need to speak to, and I go, no, they're too high. They're too far removed from the pain. Their understanding of the pain is different to the reality when you talk to the guys in operations. So when you're talking there of in case the audience missed it, there was one workshop. So it's a collaborative environment. So they are involved, but second, that you didn't create it like business architects and probably more likely also technology architects get accused of. They have 1 or 2 meetings with the business, disappear for 1 or 2 weeks, maybe a month, maybe a couple more, and they reappear and they go, ta-da! Here is your target operating model. And the business is scratching their head and going, you worked that out from that one meeting that we had? And because they weren't involved in the creation. And then from that point on, it's this, they don't understand what, it looks interesting, but it's not very useful. But the key part there is that you built it together. So for the audience, you don't go off and run away and create it because you have half the knowledge and you play it back to the business and say, we've got it. But if you do, my caveat to that would say it's for discussion, not for decision, because then you start to scare people. Then thinking that these consultants have made their mind up for us. We just got to go yes or no. And most of the time I think, you know what, they're going to do it anyway. So let's just go, yeah, okay, fine.
Yes. So there's a point where you found out enough of what the problems are, and you've identified the pain points.
Yep.
Then you have to array it into some project plan, and that also needs to be collaborative. And it needs to be prioritized using business value, technology value, and risk management factors, where you put a whole laundry list of things. Well, we're going to do all these things. You organize it into different project and rollouts. And usually I encourage, let's come up with 3 different approaches. Let's solve the problem over time, but we'll have 3 different starting points. And then it leads to the second and third being different, but eventually you get to the same place. And you're looking in that to manage risk, and you're looking where are you going to deliver the business value, and you get everybody to vote on what the business value is, and you get the technology cost also, and then you have 3 different alternatives of what your project plan, your transformation plan could be. And then you discuss it, and often you come out with different variations, and so you end up on, oh, we're going to use version 3.B1. Because people worked on it together and collaboratively, and it just defines and makes a better approachable model, and everyone's bought in again. They're collaborating.
Okay, so I think when you're saying the options, or I say the similar thing is good, better, or best. We'll give you this before, and I think you do this, is that you've identified the low-hanging fruit to get the wins, some medium-term, long-term goals. And so those 3 options are short-term, medium-term, long-term. Short-term being the quick wins at the less effort, less cost. For that other part that we talked earlier about, the getting the momentum to get the stakeholder involvement, those laggards that aren't quite on board yet to see some results, some benefits realization. And then the second one, some medium-term goals, and the third one, the longer term.
So usually there's something around the business model that overlays that's driving your decision making. So it's not just what can you do quick and what takes medium and what takes long. That's part of it, but the other part is, where do we look at the whole process map and where can we deliver business value, and look for like the 20-80 rule. Again,
Drivers,
you're looking for where do you provide 20% of the effort, but you can get 80% of the gain.
Yeah.
And so you're looking for that, and you're looking, where's our business model need to change? It could be how fast we go to market. It could be, hey, we have some costing problem. Like one place I was at, they said a pair of shoes costs this much, $20. But if it comes directly to us, the costing system gives us $20. If we first put it into inventory in the warehouse and then take it out, it costs $40.
Yeah.
That just doesn't make sense. So working out that problem in the costing makes a difference to the business model, because you get artificial results that doesn't really tell you what the true cost of something is.
Yes. Okay. So that's so I got a blog post that are just about to come out. It talks something about that design on its own is not good enough. So what you're talking, you might have a great design, but hey, you've just sent the stock to storage, which now has to be pulled out, and the extra handling cost, although it might have made it efficient, has just doubled your cost.
Right. And to make matters worse, you can have salespeople providing added services or packaging. So for, say, like for shirts or something, oh, we're going to put them on hangers. We're going to drape them a certain way, and they'll give that for the same cost as just a regular shirt. Yeah. So you have to look out at the customer front end and make sure what's the contractual deals that are made, and control that. In the terms of your business model, if you're looking for profitability, you've got to be aware of what your salespeople are doing. It's not just a cost accounting kind of exercise.
Okay, that's looking at really all the people in your ecosystem that are involved in this process of what their role and responsibility is. So because everyone that touches it's got a cost. Yes.
Okay. And you got people making deals. You got people making deals, and a lot of companies end up with really uncontrolled sales. They don't have standard sales contracts, and they're trying to be innovative and creative, but you can end up giving away a lot of value and not getting anything for it. And if you do an analysis of all your contracts, then this stuff starts to pop out, and you can really rein in your business model and your profitability.
Yep. So part of that, there's that with the ERP or CRM systems to understand that data, to understand the story, as you said earlier, the story behind the story. So, and I think so that their story behind the story is like the collaboration we alluded to before, that a collaboration at executive level doesn't start and it's a one-off. Like risk management, in my world where I come from, they'll want to just do risk management meeting one time at the start of the project and never do it again. And what happens? Big issues happen because these risks weren't managed. Same with your approach is collaboration starts at the start, but it always continues throughout the process. And that, like, for the same approach.
Yeah, so you talked about visualization, you talked about collaboration, we talked about negotiation. Those are not just something you do at the front of the project and then forget about it. It's an ongoing process, because you've got people that you're, again, trying to provide value to, and it gets into the what's in it for them, what's in it for me factor. So that's an ongoing process, and staying visual keeps everybody oriented towards, this is what the truth is. This is a map of what is really going on. And so then you can also, it's good for performance measurement, that you can show that, hey, we had 30 things that were pain points, and we have a way of solving 10 of them within 3 months. Yeah. And then being able to measure and show that this is solved, this is solved, this is solved.
Okay. So I think we might have just already discussed the process. Well, I'll recap that in a second, because what you're talking about here is critical success factors, which was our third point actually in our agenda. So I'll the last recap there of what you just said. So the audience, we didn't pick that up. The 3 key points there being visualization, collaboration, and negotiation, which is an ongoing process, as Wes just said, that And it's funny because these business transformations, whether it's an acquisition or organic or this internal driver for whatever reason, the change of business model, the three components: people, process, technology, and data. And so people is like, this is the main, where does this, we're just talking about, is that a visualization for the people, collaboration for the people, and negotiation for the people. It's like, if you dismiss the impact that people have on your transformation, that's a red flag right there, right?
Yes, I agree. And I'm glad you brought up the data part, because a lot of times people talk about transformation as people, process, technology, and they forget about what data is.
Yeah.
And data actually starts from the very beginning. So when you're drawing those maps and you have your initial conversations with the stakeholders and then the rank and file, is you're trying to understand their language. Because if you're working cross-functionally, you'll find that there's different silos of ways that they talk about things. And what's the definition? So what's the definition of a sale? Yes. What's the definition of profit? Yep. What's the definition of operating delivery time? Yep. So you have to define those and create a lexicon that goes along with these process maps that says this is what the meaning of this is. So then data is overlooked, because in any project of size, 30 to 40% of your efforts really going to be involved with doing something with data. It's curing data, bringing the quality up. It's finding additional pieces of information that aren't being captured somewhere in the process. Or you're moving where it's being captured up to the front end instead of trying to capture it at the back end. So data is just, it's an overlooked subject in a lot of transformations, and I'm glad you brought it up.
So thank you. So the part there about, I'll summarize it for the data, is that it starts, so for the audience, it starts at the beginning, so don't dismiss it. And so when I join a program, one of the first things you talked about it is the definitions. So it gets the clear terms and definitions, the glossary. And so with this current client, and I've just recently come on to help them and said, okay, so where's the vision? Oh no, we've got objectives. Okay, so that's the first thing. There's the what's in it for me is missing. The next part, okay, where's the glossary? Whoa, we started one. And it's like, well, how's that going? Well, a couple of terms in there and they forgot about it. So the ambiguity that has already started. So people's description of what actually happens and the use of different terms meaning the same. Like, we've got to help ourselves out here. What are we talking? The whole point of the process we should follow, first step, focus, is get us all on the same page. Includes the vision and the terms we use. So the same words we use mean the same thing to everyone. So the audience, we missed that. Get the vision, the glossary up front, and you talk about the lexicon. So making sure that it means the same thing throughout the process. And the other part is dismissed, overlooked about the effort involved around data. If it's, as I said, Wes, it's 30 to 40% of the effort on your program is to do with data, whether it is ingestion, completing, transforming, moving through the organization. Data can't be dismissed. That's what
Right. Right.
Okay. Now, so let me recap on I think if I recap on the process there, our second point, we kind of covered it. Sorry, audience here, I didn't signal it before we got into the discussion. So the process you follow, if I can recap this properly, or correctly rather, is that you start with the boards, that you identify the challenges. There's a visualizations, which we touch on those visualizations part, the visualization, collaboration, negotiation. But the key part is you've got everyone on the same page. And so for the audience, get out of the spreadsheets, get it into a view. Doesn't have to be complicated. But in my approach, I talk about building blocks and blueprints, is that a blueprint has two parts to it. It has a model or diagram, provide context, and a table, a background table that provides a detail of the detail that's set in the blueprint or in the model, so that you don't put too much information. And I think you touched on it as well. You said you understood the audience. You understand who your audience is. So you present to them, like you said, you summarized, when you took the detailed work that you workshop with the guys in the workshop for the processes, you took the detail out to take it back up to executives.
Yes, and I think what's important there is the executives need to know what's going on the ground, but you have to ease them into it, and you have to give them the overview first, in a simplistic format, and then you can drill into the different pieces to educate them. It's an education process throughout. Yes.
So we have a couple of things throughout, and that's so the visualization, collaboration, negotiation, but also the education process. It is like risk management, and I think we might get on that. The third point in a minute is that the risk management is not a one-off event. Neither are these. It's an ongoing event, and if it's your critical success factor. So we'll get on that in a second, though. So what we got was we got to the visualization. You got your stakeholders. You identified those on board, those not on board. You come up with an approach of how you're going to work or identify your pain points. That then out of that, based on business priorities, needs, and concern drivers, that you identify with projects. You're either, and not just based on short wins, medium term, or long term, but risk management strategies and other changes that were happening in the business. Yeah, am I right so far?
Yes, and looking for that 20-80 rule. Where can you make the impact with the 20% that makes an 80% impact?
Yep. Okay, yeah, so the 80-20 rule, the 20% effort for the 80% gain. Where if the business model needs to change? We also considered the customer experience, the customer point of view, and like we talked about moving the inventory into storage and out again. It's like, okay, might have made it efficient, but it also doubled your costs. So understanding that whole end-to-end journey, how you understood that whole end-to-end journey was in the processes. You got down to the processes. So for my business architect colleagues and for the business architecture listeners, there are some approaches that say that business process is not part of business architecture. I wonder how that is possible. The main parts of a business in terms of architecture: people, process, technology, and data. And if you don't have processes, how are you moving the data around? So for a process, so you have identified the process, you've prioritized, you've got your projects in place, and then you're off to the races. But you're also, when you're doing delivery, is that you have got these constants in place at all times. The education system, which started from the education process, it started from the beginning with the executives. You are working in, you have visualizations, that also collaboration and negotiation. Yeah, those three plus the education is happening continuous, as well as risk management.
Right. Yeah. So risk management, critical success factors. You ready to get into that?
Yeah. So now the third part. The risk management, what are the critical success factors and risk management that you'd use and look forward to make sure it's implemented for the projects?
So the first one is that stakeholder analysis, is understanding who's on board, who's not on board. So that's a risk to begin with.
Yeah.
Then there's the particular parts of what is business process risk. How much of when you talk about a business model, if we're trying to capture new revenue by introducing new products, new services, then there's risk associated with that. Then there's the part where the technology itself. So you might have some technology, if you do an assessment on it, there might be something that's broken or near broken or always problem failing. And so there's technology risks you look at.
Just on that, on the stakeholders. That stakeholders part, there was also the backfill, that you got to provide the relief for if you've got these stakeholders that you need as part of the, because we're dealing with the people in operations. We can't just say these are the guys we need, bring them on board. If they're seconded to the project or even working in BAU, their time and attention to be working on transformation as well as doing their BAU is a little bit, it could be a bit of a stretch. So what do you do for that?
Right. So that's something you have to talk with the executive sponsor about, is that realistically, when you do projects like X, Y, and Z, you're going to need to provide backfill.
Yeah.
So again, the idea is you want to take your best and your brightest, put them on your project, but free them up from having to do the normal day job. So you look for backfill in roles and responsibilities that are lower risk, they're operational, business as usual, and you can bring in temporary resources oftentimes to do a lot of that, work.
Okay, so for the listeners there, is when you're thinking about your core team or project team to run your project, and you're going to second or get your SMEs from the business, don't think that you can just go get the SMEs from the business and they do the BAU work at one point. One or both will suffer. So you got to, as Wes is saying there, backfill it. And there's options to backfill, whether you're doing temps, you are maybe, and the key part there is, if you want your project to be successful, and you've mentioned it really fast, is that you've got your best and brightest. You don't just get who's available. Because what usually happens, and my previous client, they did their requirements, they sent out a spreadsheet to the whole business and said, what is your pain points? And I said, and they go, we got a really good success rate, we've got 30% response rate. And I said, was that response from effectively the best of the brightest, or is it just from those that speak the loudest? Because you might be listening to the wrong people. So the key part there goes, listeners, in case you missed it, Wes just said the best and the brightest, and you find options to give them relief.
Yes, that's right. And you mentioned just another thing. You touched on something that are you interrogating and understanding the voice of the process, or are you also talking to the voice of the customer? So a lot of times companies make a mistake. They might use their best and brightest, but they ask them, what do you think your customers want? Instead of going for the true customer.
Yep. Yeah.
And so that's a difference, because a lot of people do their transformation and they can massage the process, but if their process is not serving what the customer really needs, you can spend a lot of money and only affect 20-30% of what really the customers care about.
Yeah. Okay. So there's
spending millions of dollars by fixing something that's not even the right answer.
Yeah, it's not the okay. So in case the listeners missed that, you're talking, and this is a term that I haven't learned before, which is the voice of the process. So VOP, if it's VOP versus VOC, the voice of the customer. So know the difference, and that difference could be, and turn to a critical success factor, is one, know which one it is, and make sure you focus on it, not the voice of the customer, maybe the stakeholder that you're talking to, but who is the actual end customer. The end customer, and may in some cases being the paying customer.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Or it can be an internal customer. So for instance, like for the financial planning and analysis project I talked about earlier, their customers were internal CFOs and directors of finance that were outside the FP&A department, but they were the consumers of the different kinds of reports and analysis.
Okay, so two types, internal, external.
Yeah, we found by talking to them that we found out what they really cared about, and that directed us in how we did our organization transformation, because some of the capabilities that the FP&A department had were providing things that the customers didn't even really need. That led to one of the reasons why we could cut headcount even while we were growing the size of the company.
Oh, wow. Yeah, very good. Good effort. Okay, so I think with you talked about it, you touched on it, but we went pretty quick there too. After the backfill, you're talking about that in terms of ongoing collaboration, negotiation, is the regular meetings with the executive team.
Yeah, so that's all part of the risk management and the critical success factors. So from the very beginning, you put together your risk register, and then you work it throughout the process in a series, a regular meeting, weekly meeting on issues management that come out of the risk, because you're trying to mitigate the risk, you're trying to manage the risk. And so you got to work those issues. And some of them you can work on with your core project team. Some have to be elevated up to your steering committee or your executive committee. So that governance of the project is something you establish right from the beginning. And you have to make sure you're communicating with that group. You're having ongoing meetings at the right cadence, and you're working the issues. So you have an issues management team. They try to resolve stuff. If there's something they can't do, you've got to elevate that to one of your regular executive steering committee meetings, because you're going to need their help pushing back down into the organization and making stuff happen.
Okay, so part of the risk management approach is that there is a steering committee, a risk and issues management committee. The project itself is tasked with addressing issues that can at that level, and it takes up to the steering committee anything that is beyond probably their scope or power or authority to answer. You manage it in terms of ongoing effort once a week in an issues meeting. Am I close so far?
Yeah, yes, you are. I just fine-tune one thing is the issues management's not a committee.
Okay.
It is the project team, it's the project manager and different project leads, and they're talking about how can we resolve the issue, what do we need to do, and then they try to solve it within the confines of the project team.
Yep.
If there's something that can't, they escalate it up to the executive steering committee.
Okay.
To get help.
And this is the ongoing effort. So for the listeners, like we said at the, not say the top of the hour, but at the start, they're about the ongoing activity, the education, the risk management, the collaboration, negotiation is ongoing. It's not a one-off. Okay, so you've set up the register, you've set up the committees, the project team itself is managing within the scope that they can, and they escalate up to the steering executive. And then you said from there it gets pushed back down to operations and into the projects from the top.
Yes, you need people to do things differently, or you need policies to change. You need
okay, all right. So
to change, and it takes the authority of corporate structure.
And how you would do that, and I think we touched on it a little before about champions. Is this your champions are the what are the messengers?
Yeah, the champions are the executive sponsor plus key stakeholders that hopefully you've got a champion in each work group.
Yep.
That can take things forward, and they're the ones that will work within their work groups on the business as usual side to solve things or research how it can get done and be practical in bringing solutions.
And I think, yeah, you've mentioned that key word before, that word practical. There's a key word. Like I've been on projects where they talk about a high level model or logical model. And so, well, this is nice and interesting, but like practical in practice and implementation, let's get away from the hairy-fairy 25,000 foot view that there's aspirational for everything. But in reality, how do we actually use this? When I talk about, and you talked about it, understanding who your audience is, that you've got the information to them or for them that at a level that they understand. So it's that there's two parts there. It's maybe interesting, but most importantly, useful because they can use it in it's practical implementation. Yeah.
So on one client where I was doing the secondary financing 3-month project that IT said would take 12 months, I ran into an accountant who was tabulating some report, and the way they were doing it was taking 8 to 12 hours to do. I ran across this and I said, hey, I have a way you can do this. And I built them a simple Excel crosstab and got it down to 30 minutes.
Wow, from 8 to 12 hours to 30 minutes.
Yes, right. And so you find that people have different levels of their technological. So an accountant, they say they know Excel, but they don't know some of the advanced features.
Yep.
And there's an opportunity. So you're looking for that all along the way. And that's, again, another example of what's in it for them. Wow, I can do this in half an hour. And that's a big win.
Okay, so yeah, the what's in it for me, what's in it for them, the one of the success factors. So sure, is there more success factors? Should I give them the summary? We've got. Let me play.
So we talked about the steering committee. You've got to have the governance model. You've got to have a risk management and an issues management theme going on. The other thing that we haven't talked about related to this is the scope change. Changes are going to happen in scope, and so even in the agile models, you're continually identifying new things and putting them in the backlog.
Yeah.
But even on the traditional SDLCs, you've got to be realistic about things are going to change. The business is going to change. There's going to be outside changes, regulatory changes, as an example. Or things internally, and you have to manage the scope of the project ongoingly. So there's a continual iteration about what's our scope? Is there some opportunity to change something? It has to be considered. It has to be adopted by the project
Yeah.
plan, and then it has to be agreed to. We're going to do it. So
Yeah.
there's this estimating going on throughout the project, and your project's going to be different than what you initially thought it was going to be
Yep.
by the time you deliver, and that's practical.
So how do you manage expectations with that, with executives down to operations, and you say, okay, here's the scope of the project, this is what we intend to deliver, but today we don't know all the requirements. We may learn, and we will learn more as we go along, but at the same time, our business environment is changing. Our customer needs are changing. So what we think today versus what will happen in 30 days, 90, 100 days time will also change. So is there a mindset change or that you have to plant this, maybe this education part, is that you're educating from the start all the way through to that exact, our scope today, we believe to be this. 30 days time, we will learn more. Our scope may change. It might expand, it might contract. Well, the reasons why are, one, we are learning more internally what is probably important to us. That's why in my approach, I talk to students and saying that by visually showing the business as you're going through and sharing the blueprints as you're updating or creating them, they will see the problem for probably the first time in this way, and they will change what's important to them. And by changing what's important to them, it changes priority, and then it may also then change the scope, and that's okay, but you have to communicate it. So how do you, with that education process, you're constantly doing that, right?
Yeah, and part of that education process is, when you talk about scope changes, what's the impact?
Yes.
So you've got to have ways to measure the impact, communicate the impact, and then bubble that up to the decision makers. If you do this, if you adopt this new thing, then this is the impact.
Yeah.
And this is the impact on the triangle. What's the impact on time,
And
cost,
quality? Yeah.
And it's a conscious decision. And sometimes if there's a fixed budget on your overall project, it means, well, something new's happening, so you got to carve out something else.
Yes.
Very often.
Okay.
So they have to be, so critical success factor is you got to be willing to be flexible. That means the executive sponsor needs to be flexible also in what's going to be delivered.
Okay, so this is part of that initial. So that's part of the initial conversation with the education process, is that we're going to go through the process. We're going to put in the risk management, the issues, the escalation process. Our scope may change, but the key part there, and I've worked with founders of startups, and I'd say, okay, guys, you want me to come in to help you, but I'm going to tell you now what's going to look like in 6 months' time. When we're going to change your model, I'm going to ask you today, are you willing to change? And they say, yes, absolutely. And we do all the work, and 6 months later say, okay, now it's implementation. And they go, no, you're changing the company. And I said, but this is the conversation that we had 6 months ago. And so the key part there, what Wes just said, is that you have to be flexible, and you've asked the question.
Yes, and I think that's one of the things when you talk about business transformation people being part strategy, is I think business transformation people have an ability to look far ahead, further ahead than maybe anyone else in the organization does. And so they anticipate, but they've got to share their thoughts and what the possibilities are, where this could go, so that you don't wait 6 months and then someone says, well, this is a big surprise.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's like, so what you're talking about there is when you have the knowledge, you have to, and it's back to the start again, is the education, the visualization, collaboration, negotiation part, is that you have to communicate that. You communicate that in a language, there's agreed common terms that the business, your audience understands. So the audience, if you're not picking it up on it, and we're talking about transformation, people, process, technology, and data, and pretty much the majority of what we've been talking about is all to do with people. Yes, data was a good part. We manage the data through the whole process, but a strong part being, although there's money spent on technology, the most of the issues come from and can be resolved if you focus on and pay attention to the people element.
Yeah, I think that the people element is really business psychology. I think that people look at re-engineering or transformation mechanically a lot of times.
Yeah.
But it's the people getting them on board, convincing them, influencing them, and developing influencers within their ranks. So that business psychology part really is a bigger part of success on a project. It's not just the mechanical, hey, I can implement this software in so many days or so many months.
Yep.
And it's not just the mechanical parts of what my policies and my procedures are, but it's the buy-in. Yeah, that's a big part. And every group's different. That's the challenge going in consulting is every company has its own culture, and you have different personalities, and that's why the upfront is so important.
Yeah, that's a key part there. Yes, every company is different, like every individual is different. Cultures are different across different countries, the different companies. And so when I get people will call me for the book, or they'll say, "What the book? I'm trying to apply it by the letter or by the book," and I'm going, "There's a key word on the front of that title, and it says framework, and it intentionally doesn't say policy. And if a framework means that you can take parts that you like and need and adjust it and apply it 2 ways, proportionately and appropriately to your situation." And so, just as Wes just said, is like every company is different, every organization is different, and so I think this is where the skill of the success of a transformation has got a lot to do with the skill of the business transformator to be able to apply these different tools and techniques, but proportionally, appropriately, and all these other personal, people, interpersonal skills. And I think that is summed up there, and you said it like so eloquently, that business psychology is like, that's, I'm going to quote you for a lot of these things. Actually, I'm going to listen to the recording. This is great stuff. Okay, so the part there, the mechanical changes versus understanding the people and the psychology of the people, and then collectively as the business, understanding who they are, focus on the people, getting them on board from the start all the way through the process. It's not a one-off effort. It's education from the front, from the start, from the top, all the way down in a manner that they can understand. Like, you're talking big projects here that are generating massive revenue for the organizations, 1 billion to 2 to 4 to 8 to 16 billion. These are, if we talk about the Fortune 500 companies, we're probably talking about the Fortune 50 companies here. These are some of the biggest companies, not just in the US, but the world. And so what's the approach? If you've not listened, this is the approach. Wes has just gone through it, of how to transform these big organizations using this approach that Wes just said. Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So you have to take care of your project team too. As a project manager, you have to take care of your core team and understand what's motivating them to be part of your project. And are they getting the career value out of it as a stepping stone for their own development? That's a big thing. Again, you're looking for the what's in it for them factor. And then you've got different people. You've got business analysts, you've got systems analysts, you've got technology architects, and they all have different things that drive them. You need to understand your people. And so I think that's another critical success factor in the health of your team.
Okay, health of the team. All right, so I'm going to summarize those ones up there. So if the audience, will recap that part, is that it's not just understanding the what's in it for me, what's in it for them element of the organization, but it's for your core team, the core project team, your business architects, analysts, certain solution architect, etc. So look after your words, the health of the team. Like I like to do with our building blocks and blueprints. When you deliver them, you celebrate it. You celebrate the success, and part of that, they get that momentum. So they go, "Oh yeah, hey, cool! Look, we can see it, we can feel it. They're excited, they're engaged." And then, so we get some momentum. And like I talk about, even for startup world, is you should protect your time and your energy, because once you got momentum, because it's very hard to get, once you got it, keep it. And the way you do that is you protect it. And so what you're saying there is you're looking after your team, you're protecting them, you're clearing the way for them to operate in the best environment for them, answering those questions, the 2 questions: what's in it for them, what's in it for me? Yeah,
that's true.
Okay, so if I can recap your critical success factors, there's the initial stakeholder management, Stakeholder analysis, you're understanding who's in, who's out, because the key part there is you want to know who's going to support, who's not. Then, so from those there's you want to make sure that you, when you come to your fine projects and getting your quick wins, you want to be coming back to, because you said you'd go back to the executive board to get updated of what the findings seeing, so that these guys come on board eventually. It's not a one-off activity. You want to understand what the process is. So where the detail, where the work actually happens, the change happens. As you said, coming from the executive level, got the direction and steer of who to go to. You go to those people. You understand at the operations level. So, and the reason why you do that, not just take the word of the word from the executive team, because their perception versus reality in most cases is not as it is in reality.
That's true. That's true. The other layer that we haven't talked about, which is a critical success factor, is communications.
Communications.
So
all right.
At the front end, you need to have a communications plan that you're constantly refining. And it's two ways. It's one is, what's the communications to the overall governance structure? What's the communications within the project team? What's the communications of the project team or the organization out to end customers when something impacts the end customer? And so I look for ways to make that proactive rather than reactive.
Okay.
So you think about multimedia ways of delivering a message, and oftentimes when you're going to send out the message, it's not just I'm going to send out an email. It could be I'm sending out an email. There might be
hold that for a minute. My battery's going to drop dead. Hold 1 second. My battery's going to drop dead. I'm going to lose it. 1 second. Wow. Jeez. That was close. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, carry on. I can cut that out there. I thought I might be able to, my battery is usually pretty good, but it must be draining all resources. I was just about to lose 2% battery's going to switch off. Okay, so you've got you're in the
communications planning. In the communications, there's
reactive,
different levels of that. Outside, inside the project, executive governance, and making it proactive rather than reactive.
Proactive instead of reactive. Yep. Okay.
Yes.
So we've got 14. Yeah. Carry on.
No, that's the thing, and that means that you've got to make your project team proactive, so they don't just say we're going to do such and such and then wait for their end users to come back with an answer. But they're going to be going out and saying, hey, how are you doing? This is coming up with, we're about to do this. Do you need any help? And manage by walking around rather than by waiting by the phone or waiting by your email. It's getting out there among the people. Okay, good one.
All right. And I think where we are right now in the virtual world, mostly, like in this client here, the reason why I am in Manchester, usually London, is that they have anchor. They call them anchor days. And so they want to be anchor, like physically, that's the term, on site 3 days a week. So that, and I'm, as much as working from home and being virtual and have clients around the world is great, but that part of being physically in the room with them, like you said about the workshopping, and so everyone can see two things. Everyone can see everyone, and everyone can see the board, and it's one single, and you talked about the single source of truth, the one single source of truth. People can get up, walk to, point to, and have that discussion, that open discussion. So everything is out on the table. All the agendas, hopefully they're good enough for all on the table. But you're being transparent, the key part there.
Yeah, you're being transparent. The other thing is not being locked into the size of a computer screen.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I've seen people come in, they'll have a presentation, maybe it's PowerPoint or Visio or something, and they'll just put it up on the screen for everybody and they'll walk through something. But I find that too confining because it doesn't show how this relates to the others. They parcel it out into screenshots, but how does it all connect together? You lose that. That's why I like everyone in the conference room, and you have big process maps that don't have any limit. basic, like, and I think it's very limiting to work on a laptop screen. And then it just amazes me that people present stuff and nobody takes notes, nobody does stuff. So they call it a kickoff session or a workshop.
Yeah.
Someone presents and nobody takes any action items out of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So again, that's part about the being a proactive in how you facilitate meetings and you get value out of the meetings.
Yeah. I worked with a program director who two things. We had a program team meeting, which had everyone on the project. The program would have about 40 people. And we had a meeting in the boardroom, and the program director wasn't, and I don't think he was invited. And so he just happened to walk by the boardroom, and he saw us all in there. And he comes in there, just stands on the side, and then he listens, and then it's wrapped up. And then he just walks to the front, and he counted everyone, and he said, "How did you guys go?" And he said, "Did you get what you wanted?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "I hope so, because this meeting just cost $20,000. And said, there must be a reason why you had this meeting." And said, and so that point was from there was, no one goes to a meeting if they don't get an action. If you have no action, you're not going to the meeting. There's no point in you going. You have nothing to contribute. You're not taking anything away. So save your time and save the project, the cluster, and the client that time of like, say, yeah. So yeah, I've been in meetings with people like, if you're not taking, yeah.
That's true. I mean, I've sometimes have done work in government. Most of mine's commercial, but sometimes I've done projects in government, and I was amazed at all the people that came to a meeting, and half of them didn't have any reason for being there.
Yeah.
They were like hangers on. And I just thought, well, that's why government's so inefficient. And that's one reason that for me, I had a hard time working in that environment, because you've got all these hangers-ons and they're not there contributing anything. If anything, you might have somebody that's going to be throwing smoke grenades or something. They might be disrupting things.
Yeah.
You got to be careful about who's involved in your meeting and why they're there.
Yes.
And there's a lot of thought that gets put into that about each work session and workshop. It's part of the upfront planning. You can't just jump into a project and go. There's a lot of planning that has to be done in order for, and if it's a big project, more planning needs to be done. If you plan well, then your implementation phases will go a lot smoother and faster.
Okay, I'm going to repeat that thing. I'm going to quote you on it, and I'm going to repeat it for a few reasons, mostly for the audience, and also maybe the current client. There's that. To quote Wes said, you can't just jump into the projects and just go. You've got to do a lot of planning. And if you plan well, the project should go well. Now, that part there about can't just jump into the project. I think there's two parts of that. There's like, you can get a project manager who'll make sure you're doing the things right. But the second question is, are they the right things? And so what you've got to ask those questions of, in a previous client, I said they had I'll call it the Bible. They had a team put together a high level, let's say an advisory pack of what you should do. And now this has been walked around the business as, this is what we're going to do now. And I said, well, wait a minute, that document you've got is two parts. It's a commercial document and a marketing document. It wasn't intended for implementation of all these now 20 plus projects that you think. And so we're going to implement now an approach, and it's called question the question, which means that you question everything that you're asked to do, including question me. So that you don't just say, okay, here's what the recommendation is, we're going to run with it, because, and to your words, Wes, basically it's not planning at all. It is just jumping into the project. You've been given a remit, but you've not questioned the remit. That remit there and you've said that you've showed the accountant there to take their 8 hours, 12 hours work down to 30 minutes. It's like, at what point did someone stop and say, is this the best way to do it? At no point in time did anyone question this lovely piece of work that say, well, should we do that? They just said, we're going to do that. And so what happened to that client is they were creating 20 initiatives. And to the examples that you used earlier is that you used, maybe you quickly covered that off camera, was that you helped a large company with their transformation and cut down the amount of work that needed to be done on a technology change by using an existing system, then implementing a new one, and saved them thousands because you questioned the question.
Yes. Yeah, in that case, it was really saving them $3 million. They had an old budgeting technology and they said, well, we're going to buy a new one. So they were looking around and they figured out, oh, we're going to buy a new one and it's going to cost $3 million. And I looked at the situation. I said, hey, you've already got this other tool over here. Let's purpose it to do this also.
Yep.
And that's where the savings of $3 million in capital came from.
Yeah. Reusing existing systems instead of going to market, buying a new one. And of course, the cost of
and then
onboarding
integrating it all.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so so the audience, you missed that. We just covered about the meetings, not just have meetings for meeting's sake, the planning, plan well, plan ahead. You can't just jump into projects. You got to plan it well. And the second part there about questioning the question is that question what you've been asked to do. And what Wes just done the example of, they reused existing kit that was already on the estate and repurposed it, changed it and adopted it for the need it served, as opposed to going to market, onboarding, integrating, saved them $3 million from questioning.
Yes. So another example around you can't just start a project. A recent client of mine brought me in and they said, we're going to implement like in 2 months. This was a smaller organization. So we're going to put in a new financial ERP. Fine. When I got in there, I started to look at the contract, the software license contract and the services contract, and then look at, okay, what's the work plan? What's the timeline that has been promised?
Yep.
And it was unrealistic. So that's one of the things about planning. Sometimes companies figure, oh, we'll create the contract, we'll set this all up, and then we'll just bring in a project manager to run it.
Yep.
But then there's a bunch of rework because the contract didn't include all the scope of what was to be delivered.
Okay.
And the services level wasn't right for delivering within 2 months. And so it turns out we had to put in a realistic budget estimate timeline, and we had to change the software contract. We have to change the services contract. And so it took about a month to do that before we actually could start the work.
Okay. So what you're talking there is, you said realistic. It needs to be realistic and based on reality. And you've used this before. You said practical. The practical, and we use the aspirational, but we're talking about actual, practical, usable, realistic. So getting away from, and I think the consultants get accused of it a lot, is it's all hairy-feary and it's touchy-feely and it feels good, but then the actual, I call that interesting. The second part being, is it useful? Useful as in your terms, you've used realistic and practical. How do you use it in real life? How do you use it in implementation? And if it can't be, and I previous client, when with their massive Bible that they wanted to adopt, is like, if you don't understand it today, don't think by us continually using that as a single source of truth and trying to understand it in 2 days' time or 2 weeks' time, it becomes any clearer. It is as clear as it is the day that you look at it. And if it's not clear now, it will never be clear. For us to try and use that as the true north to adopt from without questioning it, we're kidding ourselves. So to your point there of understanding the one that was a scope, and then breaking it down into what can we actually do. And you talked about resources and backfilling and getting those resources backfilled, but it needs to be realistic and practical for our audience. You got that?
And planning, you got to do the planning. You can't avoid the planning, and you got to have the right resources helping you do the planning. A lot of times organizations will buy software and they'll do it unilaterally, and then they expect, oh, it's time to implement, but they've left a lot out. And so bring in your project manager earlier while you're doing the planning, while you're doing the software selection, while you're doing the contract work with your vendors.
Okay,
It'll save you a lot. It's part of that. It's part of that planning phase. And if the organization could do it all on their own, they'd be fine.
Yeah.
But if you're bringing in a project manager and a consultant, it says that you don't have all the knowledge, and
Yeah.
that person oftentimes has a lot of knowledge that can help you in managing your vendors.
Yep.
And managing what your contract says and the scope of it. Gets back in the scope of project and cost of project and time
So
to deliver.
the awareness then of the client is really their strengths and weaknesses, and one of them may be they don't have the technical knowledge of managing, running the project. So go out and get it. But the key part there is, hey, yes, self-awareness or self-evaluation that you recognize you don't have that resource. Go and get it. Don't either think you can do it on the back of a fag packet and go, okay, we can try and get away with it. What you'd end up doing there would be burning through your trust, your stakeholder trust of your business, if you're trying to fudge a large project, and like you've talked about before, under resource it, under finance it if you don't have it. And then of course the key part, under planning, if you, as you said, you can't jump into the project, you've got to plan them well.
Yes, that's what
Okay.
that's what we're saying.
All right. So I sum up what I think then is our key critical success factors. We got our stakeholders up front. We understood the process from a risk perspective. We dealt with our senior stakeholders. We've got our senior steering group committee in place. We have a risk management approach in place. So we have our risk issues register. We have the steering committee where issues get taken from within the project up to steering committee for approval. We have our voice of the customer. I missed a step there. We've got our technology. Make sure you got the technology in place. In terms of resources, I think we talked about the knowledge from the SMEs and come from the business, that we need to get the best and the brightest. And how you get the best and the brightest, you don't ask them or try to put them under pressure by getting to do two roles, where's my hand there? The transformation and the BAU. You backfill them. And there's different options to backfill, including the low-skilled, low operational work that you can move people into those roles, but you want the best and the brightest. Now, there's the other one is I don't know if we call it that, well, the comparison between the voice of the VOP and the VOC, the voice of the process versus the voice of the customer. And that part there is about knowing who is the customer. There's the customer, internal customer and external customer. There's internal being other stakeholders within the organization, external being outside of the immediate process or even the organization. And in some cases, it's the paying customer. So make sure you're listening to the right people, because while you're solving the wrong problem. Yep.
Right. And if it's governmental, there could be regulations. That's going to be another customer too.
Yeah. Yeah. Another one. Yeah. And so,
and they're not paying, but they're expecting.
Yes.
By law.
Yeah. So there's actually a slight nuance there. Is the government customer? Yeah, it's not a paying customer. It's a more compliance, check and balances relationship. Then for your risk register, which got us onto the risk and steering committees, that the issues that get managed within the projects, if they can't, they escalate them up. You have you make sure that you've got the change champions. The change champion starts from initially the sponsor, and you want them down and across all different areas of the business. Now, we talked about the practical implementation and understanding the what's in it for them, what's in it for me. The issue with the scope change, there is from the kickoff and part of the education process that happens all the way through. What also happens all the way through the process was education, which it starts at the front, at the top, as well as negotiation, collaboration, and visualization all the way through. Now that the scope change is being upfront, managing expectations of, yes, this is what we know today. In 30 days time, 100 days time, we will learn more, and their scope may change, it may expand or track, but you've communicated that. And you talked about the business transformator, that they have some insight, foresight, that they can more likely see longer trajectory than the business. And we talked about the skill there of the business transformator is in communicating that to words we've used before about understanding your audience. The business transformator must understand the audience, understand their needs and wants, and communicate them in the language they understand. Am I close so far?
Yes, you are. And I think another term that carries throughout the whole project, you just talked to managing expectations.
Yeah.
That's a project manager's job. So as a strategic person, you can see far out how this all comes together. You've got to be educating, managing the expectations that we don't know everything now, that we will know. And then out there in the future, there's these risks. I have one client I was losing sleep over, because I could look out there and I saw 6 months out where things were going and things that need to happen. And then on the project, I got to a point where I could start sleeping at night because I felt like it was managed. But at the same time that I started to sleep, my project sponsor, she started to lose sleep because she started to worry about other things.
Okay.
So that's a realistic thing. How does it impact the persons that are responsible for the project?
Which you talked about was another success factor. We'll get it in a second. Yeah, that was the business transformator looking ahead. The part about the people element that needs to be practical, that the business psychology, people psychology, that it's not, the business transformation is not so much about the mechanical changes, it's around the business psychology changes. And it's about people, getting the people on board. And then we talk about every organization and culture and people are different. And so different approaches, or the degree that you apply different approaches, will change for that different environment. And it goes back to the end, the skill of the business transformator to apply your tools and techniques appropriately and proportionally. But you got that common thread of the education, the negotiation, managing expectations, collaboration and negotiation. And then this part you just mentioned here was the health of the core team. Understanding there's two parts. You've got your core team internal, so your business analysts, architects, project manager, architects, developers, etc. Then you've got the seconded SMEs that make sure that the what's in it for them, what's in it for me is being listened to. You pay attention to it. Communication is also the other theme that runs through the start right through, is that you make sure that it's proactive as opposed to reactive. And there's three types of communication. There is the communication within and from the governance structure, within the program, and then within the project itself. Yes. Yep. Okay. And then you talked about the practical side of walking around, like I said, like physically walking around, being the face, building that relationship.
Yeah, and it's not just for the project manager, it's your business analysts, your people who are liaisoning with the end user. They have to be proactive. They have to get out there and meet with the people. They have to be setting up workshops and work sessions and meeting with people. They can't be just going off in a cubicle and doing your work.
Yes. Yeah, this is partly why I like being in the office, is that you build a rapport with your colleagues, with the other, both core team and within the extended business, is that because this business transformation is, like I did a post recently talking about that if you don't understand your people trying to do your business transformation, you don't understand your business transformation. You'll never, if you don't understand your people, you won't understand the business transformation. You'll never get it done. You need to understand your people. How do you understand people? You build a relationship with them. Okay, so, and then we said about meetings and sessions, about planning. You need to, you can't just jump into your projects. You've got to plan it and plan it well. And that part there being about practical and realistic. And then we had resourcing, that you've got to put the right resources, both the right resources onto the project, and technology, that the project manager, and that was the part of resources, people resources, of identifying self-awareness, that self-evaluation, what you have and don't have, and then going and getting it. Don't think you can do these transformations on a shoestring budget or back on a fag packet. You need to resource them both people in the project, but then also we talked about just recently, just before, was that backfill those SMEs that you're seconding or bringing into the project, so you don't put them under pressure, so that you give them the space to be creative, to contribute, that their roles are backfilled, that they have that relief.
That's right. Yeah, you got to treat them well. I mean, you might even do something on the compensation plan in terms of bonus or something for the project meeting milestones. Yeah,
actually, we had Lauren Spagnola Robbins talked about in terms of reward, is that she tied the executive team, the C-suite, the benefits and changes that were delivered from the transformation would be one of the metrics they personally would be measured by, so that incentivized them, but also they really had a change champion with their, not so much neck on the line, but incentivized in a positive way, that those changes and the realization of the transformation would actually happen.
Yeah, and I think you have to consider cascading that down into the core team, the rank and
Yes.
file. A lot of times those people do put in extra hours. They can't completely give up their old job. They still have to sort of shepherd that. And so they end up putting in a lot of hours. So you want to have some way of rewarding them tangibly. It could be small things plus big things.
Yeah.
Small things being like gift cards, restaurant cards, bigger things. Say, hey, take your wife out or take your significant other out and on the company.
Yeah.
And it can be bigger things to have a bonus plan involved in the project.
Okay, so there was that part there about the reward is not just reward at the top level, but at all levels.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Awesome. Okay. So that was actually 17 success factors. So to summarize and so that was awesome, Wes. Thank you very much. So to summarize and in summary, so we covered here today that was Wes's starting point when starting on a project, and we talked about is straight to executive level from there. There's a process that you follow, and there's a few steps involved, and there's a common theme that runs through the whole lot of it about communication, negotiation, well, the first part, sorry, being visualization. There's education that happens at the start and all the way through. There's collaboration and managing expectations, negotiating. Then that happens not at the start and it's a one-off event. It happens continuous throughout the project to the end. And that's the process. And then there was 17 success factors. So mostly revolving around collaboration, education, communication, visualization, negotiation, and I get collaboration. I said that already.
Education.
And,
managing expectations.
Yeah. Wow.
The common theme. Yeah.
Okay. And then to qualify that, not that we need to, from Wes's immense background and experience, you can, in the show notes, Wes, I'll put your LinkedIn link, and if you want, just let me know. I'll put the company so people know how to get in contact, how to find you. If they want more information, want to work with you, then they know where to find you. So there you have, in terms of, and Wes gave some great examples of the projects that he's been with and the benefits and values for the changes that we just talked about. So this stuff here is not from, well, maybe originally at some point in time, like my work is, we learned it from practice and application and theory and books. This is practical application. So you've just heard from an expert, which on Wes's LinkedIn, you'll see that he's been generous to his audience or his connections, that he's not put all of his experience there. He's only put some of it. It goes back longer, although what you will read is pretty impressive. So Wes, thank you very much for your time. I know right now in the US, yes, for transparency, again, which part of the world are you in right now?
I'm in Virginia right now.
Okay, so we are on
East time.
East Coast. So I'm in UK in Manchester, as I said, for this project up here, and Wes is in the States. So we're two different continents, and so as I get message, and you'll see that on YouTube, there'll be some comments, and I'll say, oh, it's only applicable to the US, and that's only happens to the US, doesn't happen anywhere else. Now, what we've just discussed is symptoms and issues that exist in project management, program management, and business transformation, and it's not unique to the US nor the UK. It is symptoms and issues that evolve around in these projects. So if you're seeing this and these issues and events, and you're tackling a business transformation, just listen to what Wes just said about what the starting point, the processes follows, and the critical success factors he makes sure is in place to generate what you would have just heard, the returns that these projects and acquisitions and mergers that Wes has been involved in are massive.
Yeah, thank you, Heath. I appreciate the conversation and the friendly back and forth around comparing notes on our experiences. So it's great. It's great to have a touch point with yourself representing what you've seen in the UK world. And I agree with you. These problems are and challenges are similar all across the world in running projects. Yeah. And I've run projects with people offshore from India, and some of them coming onshore here, and some of them just still working there. It's a great experience. It's a great place to be in to do business transformation.
Oh yes, very much so. Okay, Wes, and I enjoy the conversation. Like we could actually, I don't know how long we were going for. I wasn't watching the clock, but I think that we could continue talking for a long time. So we'll have another one. We'll have another one sometime later, and we'll pick up and see how the world has changed and what are they doing different and better. Is the approach still valid? Have we need to adopt? Has HOBA gone to version 2.0? And everything else that's happening in the world. Okay, so Wes, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you very much again for your time. I'll post this up as soon as we can, and I'll share it with you. You can share it around if you want. It'll go onto YouTube and all on the podcast channels. Yeah. So, but again, thank you very much, Wes. Thank you for your time. Thank you for getting up early on a Saturday morning. Especially, I know that you're on a vacation right now. So, very, very thank you.
Hey, you're welcome. Thank you. I enjoyed it, Keith. Thank you.
My pleasure. Okay. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and the holiday. Okay.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Thanks, buddy. Bye-bye.
Bye.